The galaxy had learned to fear silence, because silence meant the queen was thinking, and when the alien queen thought, worlds burned, fleets vanished, and civilizations disappeared without a trace. Above the shattered remains of Earth's defense fleet, her flagship floated like a dark star, massive and alive, its surface glowing with cold blue light, and inside its throne chamber, under a ceiling that looked like a sky full of trapped stars, a single human stood in chains. His name was Aaron Vale, a simple ground soldier from what was once North America. Not a general, not a hero from legend, just a young man who survived longer than he was supposed to, and now he stood on alien metal floors before the ruler of half the known galaxy. The chamber was filled with alien nobles and war commanders, tall figures with silver skin and glowing eyes, their armor shaped like blades, their faces calm and cruel. They had seen thousands of species kneel here. They had watched kings beg, queens cry, warriors scream. At the far end of the chamber stood the throne, grown from living crystal and dark matter, and on it sat the alien queen. She was not just a ruler. She was a symbol of absolute control. Her presence felt heavy, like gravity itself bent around her. Her long white hair floated as if underwater, and her eyes burned with a soft violet light that seemed to see through bone and memory. Aaron had heard stories about her even before Earth fell, stories whispered by soldiers around dying fires. They said she offered one final gift before execution, one last wish, one answer to one question, but the question was never simple, and the answer was never safe. A commander stepped forward and spoke in a deep, echoing voice. Human male, captured during the final resistance of Sector Blue, designation Earth, you stand before Her Majesty, the sovereign of the infinite dominion. Aaron did not look at the commander. His eyes were fixed on the queen, and to everyone's surprise, he did not kneel. A low murmur spread across the chamber, because humans always knelt in the end. They cried, they begged for life, for mercy, for escape. They offered secrets, they offered loyalty, they offered anything. But Aaron remained standing, his back straight despite the energy chains burning around his wrists. The queen leaned forward slightly, studying him with curiosity instead of anger, which was already strange. Her voice filled the chamber, soft but impossible to ignore. Human, she said, your species fought bravely, but bravery without power is only delay. She rose from her throne and stepped down slowly, each step silent, yet heavy with authority. The commanders lowered their heads as she passed. When she stopped in front of Aaron, she was taller than him, but not by much, close enough for him to see faint lines of light moving under her skin like living constellations. For 10,000 years, she continued, I have ruled, I have conquered, and I have offered one question before judgment. No one has refused to kneel when I stand before them. Her eyes locked onto his, searching for fear. But Aaron's face was calm, tired but calm. He had lost everything, his family during the first bombardment, his city in the second wave, his squad in the final stand. Fear had burned out of him long ago and left something else behind. The queen lifted one hand, and the chains around his wrists loosened slightly, not freeing him, but easing the pain. The court fell completely silent. Tell me, she whispered, her voice almost gentle now, who do you desire? The question echoed across the chamber like a ripple in water. It was not a question about love alone. Everyone knew that it was deeper. It was about loyalty, power, longing, weakness. It was a test of the heart, and every answer given before had revealed selfishness. Some desired their own survival. Some desired revenge. Some desired wealth or power, and the queen always found disappointment in their answers. The commanders watched closely, expecting the same from this human. Aaron felt the weight of the galaxy on that single question. He knew whatever he said would decide more than just his life. It would confirm what the aliens believed about humanity. Weak, selfish, desperate. For a brief moment, he thought of his mother's smile, his father's tired hands, his little sister laughing in a park that no longer existed, and something steady grew inside him. He slowly raised his head higher, refusing to bow. If you wish to see how this story continues, the narrator might gently say to the audience, Remember to subscribe to this channel so you do not miss what happens next. The queen's glowing eyes narrowed slightly, waiting. Aaron opened his mouth, and instead of fear, a small, fearless smile appeared on his face. The entire alien court leaned forward, and then he began to speak, not with a plea, not with a cry, but with an answer no one in that chamber was prepared to hear. And for the first time in 10,000 years, the alien queen felt something she had almost forgotten: uncertainty. The chamber did not breathe as Aaron's voice finally broke the silence, his words calm, steady, and clear. I desire freedom for my people, not for myself. For a single heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the whispers began, sharp and confused, spreading across the alien court like cracks in glass. The commanders stared at him as if he had spoken madness, because no human had ever answered that way before. They always begged for their own lives. They always tried to save themselves. But this one had not even mentioned survival. The queen did not move, her glowing violet eyes fixed on him, searching for deception, searching for hidden fear, but she found none. Your people are nearly extinct, one general said coldly, stepping forward, his armor reflecting the light of the throne chamber. There are scattered survivors at best, hiding in broken systems. Your request is illogical. Aaron did not look at the general. He kept his eyes on the queen. Then free the survivors, he replied quietly. Let them rebuild somewhere far from your empire. Let them live without chains. That is all I desire. The general's hand moved toward his energy blade, insulted by the human's boldness. But the queen raised one finger, and the entire court fell silent again. She circled Aaron slowly, studying him like a rare creature. You understand that I can end your life with a thought, she said softly. You understand that your answer does not protect you. Yes, Aaron answered without hesitation. And you still choose this? Yes. There was no shaking in his voice, no hidden tremor, only simple truth. The queen stopped in front of him again, her expression unreadable, but something had changed in her eyes, something curious, almost disturbed. For thousands of years she had ruled through logic and strength. Her species had removed deep emotions from their society long ago. Believing feelings created weakness, believing desire created chaos. They valued order, expansion, control. But this human stood before her, ready to die. And his desire was not selfish, it was not strategic, it was not even logical in terms of survival. It was emotional, loyal, irrational. It was powerful. Why? She asked quietly. Why choose them over yourself? Aaron's gaze did not break. Because that is what makes us human. A faint ripple passed through the queen's mind, a memory buried deep from centuries ago. Before she became ruler, before the emotion filters were placed in her neural core, when she still remembered what it felt like to care. The generals noticed her silence and grew uneasy. One stepped forward boldly. Your Majesty, this human is manipulating you. He is attempting psychological disruption. We recommend immediate execution. Aaron remained still. He did not argue. He did not plead. He had said his desire, and he was ready for whatever followed. The queen slowly turned toward her generals, and when she spoke, her voice carried authority strong enough to crush stars. No. The single word echoed across the chamber like a shockwave. The generals froze, stunned, because she had never hesitated before. She looked back at Aaron, her eyes narrowing slightly, not in anger, but in fascination. You fear nothing, she observed. I fear losing what matters, he replied calmly. I already lost everything else. Again, silence. The queen stepped closer, close enough that only he could hear her next words. Do you hate me? She asked softly. The question surprised even the court. Aaron considered it carefully, and that pause felt longer than any scream. I hate what you did, he answered honestly. But I do not know you. That answer hit harder than hatred ever could. The queen straightened, something inside her shifting in ways she did not fully understand. This human was not begging, not attacking, not lying. He was simply speaking truth without fear. And fear had always been her empire's greatest weapon. "Remove his chains," she commanded suddenly. Gasps filled the chamber. Energy restraints dissolved around Aaron's wrists. And for the first time since his capture, he stood free in the throne room of the most powerful being in the galaxy. The generals stepped back in alarm, hands near weapons, but the queen raised her hand again, controlling the room with a simple gesture. "You will not be executed today," she declared, her voice calm but firm. "This human will remain under my personal observation." "Your Majesty," one commander began, but her gaze silenced him instantly. Aaron did not show relief, only quiet acceptance, as if he had already prepared himself for death and now found himself walking into something more uncertain. The queen turned away and began walking back toward her throne, but she paused halfway and glanced over her shoulder at him. "You are different," she said slowly, "and I wish to understand why." The chamber doors began to open, signaling the end of the audience, but tension remained thick in the air because the alien court had just witnessed something impossible. Their queen had spared a human, not for strategy, not for information, but for curiosity. As guards approached to escort Aaron, he felt the weight of many hostile eyes on his back. He knew he had not won anything yet. He had only stepped into a deeper danger. Because curiosity in a ruler like her could be more dangerous than hatred. And far above the throne chamber, hidden within the shadows of the flagship, certain generals began sending quiet signals to one another, their thoughts sharp and cold. The queen was changing, and change was a threat to the Dominion. As Aaron was led through glowing corridors toward an unknown fate, the queen remained standing in silence, staring at the place where he had stood, replaying his answer in her mind. "Freedom for my people, not for myself." For the first time in centuries, a question formed in her thoughts that had nothing to do with conquest. What would it mean to desire something beyond power? And why did a single human make her doubt 10,000 years of certainty? The game had shifted, and neither of them yet understood how deeply the galaxy would tremble because one human refused to fear. Aaron was not taken to a prison cell, and that alone told him this situation was more dangerous than execution. Instead of cold metal bars and energy locks, the guards escorted him through long silver corridors filled with soft blue light, the walls alive with moving patterns that looked like slow rivers of stars. Everything inside the flagship felt controlled, silent, perfect, almost too perfect. He noticed there were no decorations, no art, no symbols of family or history, only efficiency and power. It was a civilization built on victory, not memory. After several minutes, the guard stopped before a tall circular door made of black crystal. They stepped aside and bowed their heads, and the door opened without a sound. Inside waited the queen, alone. The chamber was different from the throne hall. It was smaller, quieter, with a large transparent wall showing the endless stretch of space outside, distant stars shining like silent witnesses. The queen stood near the window, her back turned to him, her white hair floating gently around her shoulders. She did not wear a heavy crown or ceremonial armor now, only a simple dark robe woven with faint lines of light. "You may leave," she told the guards, and the door sealed behind Aaron, leaving him alone with the most powerful being in the galaxy. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Aaron studied the room carefully, no visible weapons, no visible guards, but he knew power did not always need to be visible. "You are not afraid," the queen said finally, still looking at the stars. "I am," Aaron replied honestly. "I just do not let fear decide my words." That answer made her slowly turn toward him, and again, that faint ripple moved through her expression, as if she was hearing something she had not heard in centuries. "In my empire," she said, walking slowly around him, "we removed unnecessary emotions long ago. Fear leads to rebellion. Love leads to distraction. Grief leads to weakness. We chose evolution over chaos." Aaron listened carefully, noticing how she said we, not they. "And are you stronger because of that?" he asked calmly. She stopped walking, her eyes narrowing slightly, not in anger, but in thought. "We conquered half the galaxy," she answered. "Strength is measurable." But happiness is not, Aaron replied. The word happiness seemed strange in that room, like a foreign sound. The queen studied his face again, searching for hidden intention. Explain, she demanded softly. Aaron hesitated only briefly, thinking of Earth, of oceans and forests, of people laughing in crowded streets before the invasion. My people were not perfect, he began. We fought each other, we made mistakes, but we also loved, we created music, art, stories, families. We cared about small things that had no value in war. He looked directly at her. That is why we fought so hard. Not because we believed we could win, but because we did not want to lose those things. The queen felt something unfamiliar in her chest, a quiet pressure she could not analyze. You speak of attachments, she said slowly. Attachments create vulnerability. Yes, Aaron agreed without hesitation. But they also create meaning. Silence filled the chamber again, heavier this time. She walked to a small console and activated a holographic display. Images of destroyed human cities appeared in the air, broken towers, burning skies, empty streets. Your world resisted longer than predicted, she said, observing the data coldly. Your survival rate is below 3%. Aaron forced himself to look at the images without turning away, his jaw tightening. But he did not shout, he did not blame. 3% is still alive, he said quietly. That is enough. The queen turned sharply toward him. Enough for what? Enough to rebuild, he answered. His certainty disturbed her more than anger would have, because it did not match the numbers, it did not follow logic. She deactivated the display slowly, her thoughts moving faster than she showed. For 10,000 years, she said quietly, almost to herself. No one has stood before me without begging, without breaking, without hatred consuming them. She stepped closer to him, close enough to see the faint scars on his face, marks left by battle. Why are you different? Aaron met her gaze steadily. Maybe I am not different, he said. Maybe your empire has just never allowed anyone to be honest with you. That statement struck deeper than he realized. For the first time in centuries, the queen questioned not a strategy, not a war plan, but her own system. Before she could respond, a faint alert signal pulsed through the room, subtle but urgent. Her expression shifted instantly back to ruler mode, controlled and unreadable. She moved to the console and scanned incoming data. Aaron could not see the full display, but he noticed tension return to her posture. What is it? He asked carefully. Internal discussion, she replied coldly. Certain members of my High Council are concerned. About me, Aaron said. About change, she corrected. The word hung heavy between them. She dismissed the alert and turned back toward him, her voice quieter now, more personal. If I granted your desire, she asked slowly, if I allowed your survivors to leave my territory, to rebuild beyond my reach, what would stop them from seeking revenge? Aaron thought about that carefully, because it was a fair question. Nothing, he admitted. Some might hate you forever. The queen's eyes sharpened, expecting defiance. But some might choose peace, he continued, because freedom changes people. It gives them something to protect instead of something to destroy. Again, that strange pressure in her chest grew stronger. She had ruled through control, through fear, through dominance. But this human spoke of something more powerful, something she had once known before her people removed the chaos of emotion from their minds. She stepped closer one final time, her voice almost a whisper now. What if, she said slowly, I desired something as well? Aaron did not step back, even though she stood only inches away. Then you should be honest about it, he replied. Her violet eyes searched his face deeply, as if trying to understand the shape of this new feeling forming inside her. Outside the chamber window, distant stars flickered, silent and endless. And far away in another sector of the flagship, members of the High Council gathered in secret, their expressions dark, their thoughts unified in one dangerous belief. The queen was changing, and change could not be allowed. Back in the chamber, the queen finally spoke again, her voice softer than ever before. What if I chose you? She whispered, not as a ruler, but as something else entirely. And for the first time since his capture, Aaron felt something unexpected. Not fear, but uncertainty. The corridors leading from the Queen's private chamber were darker than the main halls, lit only by faint lines of energy pulsing along the walls, and as Aaron walked behind the guards, he felt a tension in the air heavier than before, as if the ship itself was holding its breath. For days, he had been trying to understand the Queen, her curiosity, her rare moments of softness, and the way she watched him like a scholar studying a living experiment. But now, he was beginning to sense there was more beneath her calm exterior than anyone had ever known. The guards led him to a secluded observation deck, far above the fleet control rooms, with a wide, panoramic view of the galaxy. And as he looked out, he realized just how small Earth's remnants really were, tiny sparks of resistance hiding among stars too vast to count. The Queen followed him silently, her presence calm, yet commanding. And when she finally spoke, her voice was softer than before, almost hesitant. "Do you understand why I am the way I am?" Aaron shook his head slowly. "I understand power," he said. "I understand fear. I do not understand you." She turned slightly, studying him, and for the first time, he noticed the faint lines of fatigue beneath her glowing eyes, subtle cracks in a perfect mask. "I was forced into this role," she admitted, her voice lower than before. "I was not born to rule. I was born to serve and to control." Aaron blinked, surprised at her honesty, because no ruler had ever spoken weakness in his presence, not even the generals who surrounded her throne. "Then why continue?" he asked carefully. "Why not step down?" The Queen's gaze drifted to the stars outside, distant suns flickering like dying embers. "Because stepping down is not an option for my kind," she said slowly. "Emotions are dangerous to my people. They must be removed to survive. And I must stay above them." She paused, and for a moment, her eyes seemed to soften, almost human. "But seeing you, listening to you, has reminded me of what was lost." Aaron stepped closer, though he remained cautious. "What was lost?" he repeated. "Peace? Happiness? Love?" She let out a soft, almost imperceptible sigh. "All of it," she said. "Generations of my species traded emotion for order, strength for control, desire for survival. We built an empire, yes, but we forgot why empires should exist in the first place." Her words hung between them like a heavy fog, and Aaron felt a strange mixture of fear and hope, because he realized she was not only the ruler of this empire, she was also its prisoner, chained by centuries of expectations and cold logic. From the corner of the observation deck, a silent alarm pulsed faintly, signaling that a section of the High Council had convened without her knowledge. And Aaron sensed the danger immediately. They would not tolerate a ruler who questioned tradition, even one as powerful as the Queen. "Your council," he said cautiously, "they will act." She nodded, her jaw tightening. "They have already begun," she whispered. "They call it a cleansing. They fear change, weakness, curiosity. I cannot allow them to succeed, or everything I have built will crumble." Aaron felt the weight of the galaxy press against him, knowing that the humans he wanted to save would be caught in the crossfire if a civil war erupted. Yet he also knew that he had a unique position, the ability to influence the Queen and perhaps even alter the course of history. The Queen moved closer to the edge of the deck, her glowing eyes scanning the stars as if seeking answers from the void. "I have seen countless species rise and fall," she said, her voice low and sharp. "But humans, you are different. You fight not for domination, not for power, not for survival alone, but for something fragile, something worth protecting. That is a dangerous quality in a galaxy ruled by control." Aaron swallowed hard. "It is also what makes us worth protecting," he said, "even now, even after everything." For the first time, the Queen allowed herself a faint, almost imperceptible smile, and it unsettled her more than it reassured her, because it reminded her that vulnerability could feel like power, that a human could stand before her and not bow, not beg, and yet wield influence simply by truth. Suddenly, a series of lights blinked urgently on the deck's control panel, red warnings signaling movement from hidden corridors, the presence of armed council members advancing toward the Queen's private sector. "They are here," she said calmly, though her eyes flared with sudden intensity. "They believe I am weak, that my curiosity can be exploited. And perhaps they are right." Aaron instinctively stepped forward, feeling the energy chains of responsibility and danger tighten around him. "I can help," he said quietly. "I can warn you, guide you, if you let me." The Queen studied him, her violet eyes sharp and unwavering. "You are a human," she said slowly. "I should not trust you. Your species is fragile, unpredictable, impulsive. You could destroy everything I'm trying to protect." Aaron met her gaze without flinching. "Or I could save it," he said, "because sometimes survival is not about control. Sometimes it's about courage and honesty and the willingness to act when everyone else hesitates." The Queen's lips pressed into a thin line, and for the first time, Aaron saw hesitation in her posture, a dangerous, powerful hesitation that could mean either salvation or total ruin. Far away, through hidden sensors and secret corridors, the High Council moved like shadows, plotting, whispering, calculating, their voices sharp, cold, unified in one goal: remove the human influence and reclaim their perfect, controlled empire. The Queen turned back to Aaron, her expression unreadable, her voice softer than ever before. "If I allow you to interfere, if I allow your perspective to guide me, will you betray me?" Aaron's eyes did not waver. "I will not betray truth," he said. "And sometimes, truth is more dangerous than any weapon." The Queen stepped back slightly, her fingers brushing the holographic map of her empire, thoughts swirling, calculations running faster than any human mind could follow. Yet amidst the logic, a single question formed in her mind, fragile and dangerous. What if the answer I seek is not power, but courage? And what if it is found in a human? Behind the throne, the shadows of betrayal and loyalty began to twist and collide. The Queen was no longer just a ruler. She was a mother of a secret war, a pawn in her own empire. And Aaron, he was now at the center of it, unknowingly holding the thread that could unravel or save the galaxy. Every step he took forward brought the potential for revolution, for disaster, for revelation. And the stars outside, silent and endless, seemed to watch and wait, as if aware that the fate of billions was being quietly rewritten in this one hidden chamber. The alarms began almost silently, a subtle vibration through the metal floors, but Aaron felt it immediately, a warning pulse that ran along his nerves, as if the ship itself were speaking to him. The High Council had acted, moving in secret, activating hidden fleets and dispatching strike teams through corridors that were meant to be secure, their plan precise and ruthless, designed to remove the Queen before she could question tradition any further. From the observation deck, the Queen's violet eyes scanned the distant flickers of energy signatures, the controlled dance of weapons and ships preparing to strike, and for the first time, her face showed something like fear, not for herself, but for what the humans could lose, for the fragile hope that Aaron had awakened in her, and for the balance of her empire, which could collapse with the slightest misstep. Aaron stepped beside her, his presence calm but charged with purpose. "They will attack," he said quietly. "They believe I am a threat, and that you are weak because you show hesitation." The Queen's lips pressed into a thin line. "Then they underestimate me," she said, but her voice lacked the cold certainty it usually carried, the usual edge of absolute authority replaced by careful calculation. Through the transparent wall, the first flashes of energy weapons ignited across distant corridors, a cascade of light and destruction moving toward the heart of the flagship, and in the center of it all, the Queen's throne chamber, now vulnerable. The generals had split their forces, some to take control of the ship, others to spread chaos through the Empire's communication network, isolating her and testing her ability to respond. Aaron watched as the first teams approached the deck, moving with lethal precision, their intent clear. They would not negotiate, they would not reason, they would kill. "Then we fight," Aaron said calmly. But the words carried more weight than any weapon, because his calmness suggested courage beyond fear, a human bravery that had no need for hesitation. The queen turned toward him, a flicker of surprise crossing her expression. "Fight," she echoed. "With what?" He pointed to the array of ships outside. Many abandoned, many still functional but considered useless by the council. "We use what they left behind," he said. "We turn their weapons against them, show them that humans are not so easy to destroy." For the first time, a spark of a plan formed in her mind, guided by the unpredictability of this human, and she gave a single command to her personal guard: "Deploy defenses, but hold fire until I give the signal." The deck hummed with energy as shields activated and automated defense systems powered up, and Aaron moved to the console, his fingers flying across alien controls he barely understood, yet instinct guided him. The High Council strike teams reached the deck, silent as shadows, their weapons glowing with lethal intent, and as they breached the first barrier, the Queen's voice cut through the air like thunder. "Stop," she commanded, and the sound was absolute, unyielding, echoing across the deck like the roar of a collapsing star. And for a moment, the attackers froze, caught off guard by the authority in a voice that had rarely shown emotion. Aaron saw the hesitation, seized it, and activated a series of systems the Council had ignored, defensive turrets rising from hidden panels, energy nets snapping into place, trapping intruders with precision. The humans who survived on scattered worlds, still hiding in broken systems, could never imagine the moment unfolding within the flagship. A single human standing beside an alien queen, turning the tide with nothing but courage and instinct. The strike teams tried to regroup, but every action they took was anticipated, every movement countered, because the queen had allowed herself to feel again, to think beyond order and control, guided by Aaron's presence. Through the corridors, other loyal soldiers of the Dominion hesitated, unsure whether to continue the assault against a ruler showing weakness, and that hesitation spread like wildfire, fracturing the Council's precise plans. Aaron's voice rose, calm but commanding. "You see," he said, "fear has its limits, but courage inspires even the strongest to question themselves." Outside the observation deck, alien ships turned, energy weapons once aimed at Earth survivors now redirected, not out of mercy, but because the Queen recognized strength in humanity that could not be extinguished. The High Council's generals realized too late that the human had become a catalyst, a spark igniting a fire that would consume their certainty. The Queen stepped forward beside Aaron, her hand resting lightly on the console, guiding the defense, her eyes sharper than ever, scanning each threat with a mixture of logic and something new, something she had not felt in centuries: hope. The battle was not silent. The hum of energy shields, the crackle of redirected weapons, and the shouts of alien soldiers filled the air, but Aaron moved through it calmly. Precise, each decision weighted with the lives at stake, each action measured, yet daring. And then, the Council's flagship, the hidden command vessel controlling this operation, appeared on the deck's display, glowing red, a symbol of their arrogance and underestimation. "They believe they can win," Aaron said quietly. "They are wrong." The Queen's lips curved slightly, not in amusement, but in recognition of a truth she had almost forgotten. The courage of humans could challenge centuries of control, could inspire doubt in the strongest, could turn fear into action. She reached out, touching a holographic interface, and with a single command, she severed the Council's communication network, isolating their forces, leaving them vulnerable to counterattack. And as the strike teams began to fall back, confusion spreading among their ranks, Aaron realized that humanity's fight back was more than survival. It was a statement, a challenge to domination, a declaration that even the smallest, most fragile species could alter the course of empires. The Queen turned toward him, her violet eyes glowing brighter than ever. "You are not just brave," she said softly. "You are dangerous." He smiled faintly. "Dangerous, yes, but only because I am human." And in that moment, as the distant stars glimmered beyond the observation deck, the first true battle for the heart of the galaxy had begun, not with weapons alone, but with courage, unity, and the unyielding will of humanity. For Aaron, for the survivors scattered among the stars, and for the queen who had dared to feel once more, the fight was just beginning, and no one could predict the outcome. The galaxy was listening, watching, waiting, and it would remember this day, the day humans refused to bow, and the day a queen dared to follow curiosity into a war that would change everything. The throne chamber had been transformed into a war room, yet it felt almost intimate. A dangerous calm settled over it as the queen and Aaron stood together before the holographic map of the galaxy, scattered fleets blinking in red and blue, representing the loyalists and the rebels. The High Council was in open revolt, their influence spreading like wildfire through the Dominion's outer sectors, and the Queen's advisors whispered in urgency, their voices sharp and cold, demanding swift punishment and absolute compliance. Yet she ignored them, her attention entirely on Aaron. "You must understand," she said slowly, her violet eyes fixed on the human. "If I choose wrong, billions will die, entire worlds will fall, and my empire could collapse in a single day." Aaron's gaze never wavered, calm and steady despite the stakes. "Then choose wisely," he said simply, "but not for power, not for order. Choose for what is right, for what must be saved, even if it scares you." The Queen's hand hovered over the central control, fingers brushing the holographic interface that controlled weapons capable of erasing planets, systems, even entire fleets, the temptation of absolute control pressing down like gravity, familiar and intoxicating. Yet something new tugged at her mind, a feeling she had not allowed herself to acknowledge for centuries. "What you call right," she said carefully, "is dangerous. It is unpredictable, uncontrollable. Logic tells me to end this rebellion, to destroy any challenge before it grows. Yet your presence, your courage, it makes me question everything." Aaron stepped closer, unafraid. "Logic is not the same as justice," he said. "You could save lives, not just obey protocol. You could do something that your empire has forgotten, something only a human could remind you to do, care." The chamber was silent, save for the low hum of the energy field surrounding the throne, a hum that now seemed to echo the uncertainty in the Queen's mind, uncertainty she had never tolerated before. Suddenly, a communication alert blinked insistently, the signature unmistakable. An outer sector fleet loyal to the High Council was moving toward the central command station, intending to seize control and declare the Queen unfit to rule. Aaron's eyes narrowed as he studied the map, plotting and calculating. "They want to force your hand," he said quietly. "They believe that you will strike blindly to maintain control, that you will sacrifice everything for order. But this is your chance to show them that power can mean more than fear." The Queen's lips pressed into a thin line, her fingers trembling ever so slightly, betraying the storm of thought behind her calm exterior. And for the first time in her reign, she felt the full weight of choice, the kind of choice that could reshape not just her empire, but the entire galaxy. "You asked me to gamble," she said finally, her voice low, almost whispering. "I could destroy the council now, ensure my control, eliminate every threat. I could end this rebellion before it even begins." "Yes," Aaron said softly, "but then nothing changes. Fear would still rule. You would still be alone. You would still be the queen of an empire built on obedience, not courage." Her eyes softened slightly, the faintest flicker of something resembling hope passing through them. "And if I fail?" she asked quietly, her words carrying centuries of doubt and careful calculation. "If my choice costs everything?" "Then you learn," Aaron replied calmly, "because sometimes the only way to protect what matters is to risk losing everything, to trust courage over control, to trust humanity over fear." The Queen closed her eyes briefly, drawing a deep breath, and for a heartbeat, the world seemed suspended, waiting for her decision. Then, with deliberate motion, she lifted her hand over the control console, but instead of unleashing planetary annihilation on the High Council's fleet, she initiated a series of countermeasures designed to disable weapons, isolate the rebels, and protect the innocent, redirecting their own systems against them without a single life lost. The generals in the chamber gasped, unable to understand the logic, the audacity, the sheer unpredictability of her choice. Yet worked, the fleet faltered, the rebellion stalled, and for the first time, the Queen's authority was not enforced by fear, but by action, by a demonstration of courage and wisdom. Aaron watched her, awe and relief mixing in his chest, understanding that this moment, the choice, the courage, the refusal to bow to fear, was the turning point, not just for him, but for every human still surviving in scattered systems, and for the Queen herself, who had allowed herself to feel again, to act beyond strategy, beyond protocol, beyond centuries of control. She turned to him, her eyes now reflecting more than light from distant stars, reflecting something deeper, something dangerous and fragile at once. "You have taught me something I thought I had lost," she said softly. "That true power is not in fear. It is in choice, in courage, in the willingness to act when others hesitate." Aaron nodded, feeling the weight of the galaxy lighten slightly, yet knowing the struggle was far from over. "Then let's make sure this choice lasts," he said quietly. "Let's ensure that freedom, courage, and humanity endure, not just today, but for every day that comes after." Outside the observation deck, the battle shifted, confusion rippling through the Council's forces as loyalists recognized the Queen's change, some turning their allegiance, others faltering entirely, unable to act against a ruler who now led not through fear, but through vision. Inside the chamber, the Queen allowed herself a moment she had never permitted before, a single, genuine breath, as though the galaxy itself were exhaling in relief. She had chosen humanity over control, courage over calculation, and the consequences would ripple across systems, fleets, and worlds for decades to come. And at that moment, as Aaron stood beside her, he understood fully what he had always suspected. Sometimes a single choice, made with truth and courage, could change the course of the galaxy, even if it meant defying everything that had come before, even if it meant rewriting the rules of power itself. Because in the end, the heart's choice was stronger than any weapon, and the Queen, for the first time in 10,000 years, was willing to act on it. The throne chamber was quiet now, but it was a quiet charged with tension, as if the very air was holding its breath, waiting for the final move in a game that had spanned centuries. The galaxy outside glittered with distant stars, tiny witnesses to a moment that would echo across light years, a moment when the fate of billions hung not on fleets, not on weapons, but on courage and choice. The Queen stood before Aaron, her eyes no longer only violet and calculating, but alive with something entirely new, an emotion she had not allowed herself to feel for centuries, a dangerous and fragile awareness that shifted everything. "You have changed more than the outcome of a battle," she said softly, her voice trembling just slightly, betraying her centuries of control. "You have changed me, and perhaps even my empire." Aaron looked at her, steady, calm, the same human who had stood fearless before her throne from the beginning, yet now carrying the weight of the galaxy's fragile hope on his shoulders. "Then let us ensure it changes for the better," he said quietly. "Not just for you, not just for me, but for every life that will follow." The Queen moved closer, her hand resting briefly on the console, then lifting as she considered the enormity of her next words. "And what do you desire now?" she asked, her voice both question and challenge, her eyes searching for truth. Aaron paused, thinking not only of himself, but of the scattered humans hiding among the stars, of the survivors who would rebuild, who would carry the spark of life and hope into a galaxy that had tried to erase them. "A future," he said finally, his voice calm, but carrying the weight of everything he had lost and everything he still hoped to protect. "A future where humanity is more than survival, where courage and honesty matter more than fear." The Queen studied him for a long moment, the violet glow of her eyes dimming slightly as she processed his words, as if she were measuring their power against the rules and logic that had guided her empire for 10,000 years. Then she stepped back, lifting her hand and activating a series of holographic commands, shutting down the High Council's secret networks, dispersing their fleets, and declaring peace across sectors that had been ruled by fear and obedience alone. The generals watching from afar were stunned, caught between disbelief and awe, unable to comprehend how a human and one ruler's choice could topple their decades of planning. And in that silence, in the calm that followed chaos, the queen allowed herself to speak again, her voice softer now, almost personal. I sought power, I sought control, I sought obedience, yet what I desired most was courage, and I have found it in you. Aaron blinked, the weight of her words settling over him like a strange warmth, not pride, not fear, but recognition, and he realized that the galaxy itself was shifting under the strength of something deeper than war, deeper than strategy, something he had always understood, yet never imagined could reach even a queen. You have given me a choice I never thought I would make, she continued, her voice trembling slightly. I could have destroyed you, I could have destroyed your people, but I chose hope, and I chose courage. Outside, fleets once poised for annihilation now hovered uncertainly. Alien soldiers exchanging glances, realizing that the rules had changed, that loyalty and fear no longer dictated action, that the future could be rewritten. Aaron stepped closer to the queen, the two of them standing in silence as the galaxy seemed to pause with them, the stars outside reflecting in the crystal walls of the chamber, bright and endless, full of possibility. And now, the queen whispered, leaning forward, her eyes locking onto his, I ask you again, what do you desire? Aaron smiled faintly, calm but resolute. A future, he repeated, a future where we are free to fight for what matters, not for survival alone, but for hope, for courage, for life, for a heartbeat. The chamber was still, the silence stretching across light years, as if the universe itself had stopped to hear. Then the queen nodded slowly, a subtle smile touching her lips, the first genuine smile in a millennium. Then we will build that future together, she said, her voice soft but unwavering. And perhaps, finally, the stars will remember a choice not made in fear, but in courage and truth. Aaron exhaled, the tension that had clung to him since the fall of Earth finally easing. Yet he knew the work was just beginning. The galaxy was vast, and peace was fragile. But for the first time, he felt hope. And the queen, standing beside him, felt something she had never felt before, a sense of purpose unbound by rules, unshackled by centuries of control, free to act not as a ruler of fear, but as a guardian of possibility. Together, they looked out at the endless expanse, the scattered lights of distant systems glimmering with potential. And for the first time in millennia, the galaxy held its breath, waiting, watching, remembering that sometimes courage and a single honest answer could shake the stars themselves. And in that quiet, fragile moment, Aaron and the Queen understood that the real battle was not over fleets or planets, but over the heart of the galaxy, and that the answer they had chosen, the answer of courage, hope, and truth, would echo across eternity, guiding the stars and all who looked to them for light.